Man insults Keanu Reeves on a first-class flight, instantly regrets it when the truth is revealed. It was a routine evening flight from Los Angeles to New York. The passengers in first class were settling into their luxurious seats, sipping on pre-flight champagne and preparing for a comfortable journey across the country. Among them was a man named Richard Caldwell, a wealthy entrepreneur who believed himself to be above most people. He had made his fortune in tech startups and had grown accustomed to the perks of high society. As Richard took his seat, he noticed a casually dressed man sitting next to him. The man wore a simple black t-shirt, jeans and well-worn sneakers. His long, dark hair was slightly unkempt, and he carried a modest backpack rather than an expensive designer briefcase. At first glance, Richard assumed he was some random middle-class traveller who had somehow managed to snag a seat in first class. Richard scoffed and muttered under his breath, "Some people just don't belong here." The man beside him didn't react. Instead, he smiled politely and looked out the window. As the flight attendants made their rounds, offering premium wine and gourmet appetizers, Richard couldn't help but make snide comments. "You know, first class isn't just about having money. It's about class, refinement. Some people think they can just buy their way in, but it's really about belonging," Richard said smugly. The man turned to him with a calm expression. "I suppose everyone has their own definition of what it means to belong." Richard smirked. "Exactly. And let me guess, you got upgraded or won some contest. I mean, no offense, but you don't exactly look like you belong in first class." At that moment, a flight attendant approached, smiling warmly at the man. "Mr. Reeves, it's such an honor to have you on board again. If you need anything at all, please don't hesitate to ask." Richard's face turned pale. He looked again at the man sitting beside him, really looked at him this time. The long hair, the kind eyes, the familiar face. "Oh my God," Richard stammered. You're Keanu Reeves." Keanu chuckled softly. "Yeah, last time I checked." Richard felt his stomach drop. He had just spent the last 10 minutes insulting one of the most beloved and respected actors in Hollywood, someone known not just for his talent, but for his humility and kindness. I'm so sorry," Richard stuttered, suddenly feeling incredibly small. "I didn't realize." Keanu waved a hand dismissively. "Don't worry about it. It happens more often than you'd think." The rest of the flight was silent between them, but Richard couldn't stop thinking about what had just happened. Here he was, a man who prided himself on wealth and status, yet he had just insulted someone far more successful, yet infinitely more humble than himself. As they landed in New York, Richard hesitated before speaking again. "Mr. Reeves, I just want to say, I was a jerk. I judged you without knowing anything about you, and I feel like an idiot." Keanu smiled kindly. "We all have moments like that. What matters is that we learn from them." Richard nodded, feeling a strange sense of admiration for the man he had so foolishly insulted. As Keanu walked away, he realized that true class wasn't about expensive suits or first-class tickets. It was about how you treated others, no matter who they were. As Richard watched Keanu Reeves walk away with effortless grace, he felt an unfamiliar weight settle in his chest. Shame. He had spent years believing that status and money defined a person's worth, yet here was a man who had more success than Richard could ever dream of, and he was as humble as they came. Richard picked up his designer carry-on and made his way through the terminal, his mind still reeling from the encounter. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had missed something crucial in life. He had spent years chasing wealth, building an empire, ensuring that everyone knew his name in the business world. But what had it really gotten him? A first-class seat? A smug sense of superiority? As he walked toward the baggage claim, he noticed a small commotion near the exit. A young woman with a nervous expression was struggling to carry 2 large suitcases while holding the hand of a little boy who couldn't have been more than 5 years old. The child, with tear-filled eyes, kept tugging at his mother's sleeve. "Mommy, my legs hurt," the boy whimpered. The mother, clearly exhausted, sighed and knelt down. "I know, sweetheart. We just need to get outside and find a taxi, okay?" People walked past them, too busy with their own lives to offer help. Richard hesitated. Normally, this wasn't his concern. He wasn't the kind of guy who helped strangers, but something about the way Keanu had treated him, despite how rude he had been, made Richard pause. Before he could second-guess himself, he stepped forward. "Excuse me, do you need a hand?" The woman looked up, startled. "Oh, no, it's okay. I don't want to bother you." "It's no bother," Richard said, surprising himself with his own sincerity. He reached down and grabbed one of the heavy suitcases. "Let's get you to a taxi." The woman looked at him with relief. "Thank you. That's really kind of you." As Richard helped them outside, he caught a glimpse of Keanu Reeves standing near the curb, slipping on a pair of sunglasses. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and Keanu gave him a knowing smile before stepping into a car and disappearing into the night. For the first time in a long while, Richard felt something stir within him, a desire to be better. Not just richer, not just more successful, but better. And all because a humble Hollywood star had shown him, without even trying, what true class really meant. The taxi pulled up to the curb, and Richard carefully placed the woman's suitcase in the trunk. The little boy, now clinging to his mother's leg, looked up at Richard with wide eyes. "Are you a superhero?" the boy asked shyly. Richard chuckled, shaking his head. "No, kid. Just a guy trying to help." The mother smiled warmly as she ushered her son into the taxi. "Well, whatever you are, thank you. It's been a rough day." Richard nodded. "Safe travels." As the taxi drove off, he stood there for a moment, feeling different. He had spent his entire adult life chasing wealth and recognition, thinking those were the things that truly mattered. But Keanu Reeves, one of the most famous men in the world, had shown him that real success wasn't measured by money or status, but by character. Richard checked his watch. His personal driver was waiting for him outside the terminal. As he walked toward his car, his mind replayed the events of the flight. He had started the journey as an arrogant businessman who judged people by their appearance. Now he was leaving with a lesson he'd never forget. As he got into the sleek black Mercedes, his phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from his assistant, confirming a business meeting for the next day with investors. Normally he would have read it immediately, preparing for how he could impress them, how he could get more. But for the first time in years, Richard didn't care about business strategies or profits. Instead, he glanced out the window and thought about how he could be more like Keanu Reeves. Maybe it was time to change. Maybe it was time to be better.